There are places on this earth that defy every logical explanation we possess. Phenomena so bewildering that even our most advanced science falls silent before them. Ancient mysteries that have puzzled humanity for thousands of years, and modern enigmas that continue to baffle experts today. These are not stories from folklore or imagination. These are documented, witnessed, and thoroughly investigated mysteries that refuse to yield their secrets no matter how hard we try to solve them. What you're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about the world around us. From impossible structures that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of physics, to creatures that vanish without a trace, to sounds from the depths of space that scientists cannot explain. Today we'll journey into the most perplexing, unsolved mysteries that our planet has to offer. So fasten your seatbelt as we dive into today's exploration. But first, they say you'll have incredible luck if you like and subscribe before this video ends. The Taos Hum. Deep in the high desert of New Mexico lies the small town of Taos. Population barely 6,000. But this quiet, artistic community harbors one of the most maddening acoustic mysteries ever documented. For decades, residents and visitors have reported hearing a persistent, low-frequency humming sound that seems to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at once. The Taos Hum isn't just background noise. Those who hear it describe it as a constant droning buzz similar to the sound of a distant diesel engine idling, or electrical equipment running somewhere just out of sight. But here's what makes it truly mysterious. Only about 2% of the population can actually hear it. The other 98% hear nothing at all. Those afflicted by the hum report that it never stops. Day or night, indoors or outdoors, the sound persists with maddening consistency. Some describe it as barely perceptible, while others find it so overwhelming they've considered moving away entirely. The sound appears to be stronger at night and more noticeable in quiet, rural areas than in the bustling center of town. Scientists have descended upon Taos with every conceivable piece of acoustic equipment. They've used sensitive microphones, seismic detectors, and electromagnetic field sensors. Teams from universities, government agencies, and private research organizations have all tried to capture evidence of whatever might be causing this phantom sound. Yet despite decades of investigation, no external source has ever been identified. The most comprehensive study was conducted in the 1990s by a team of scientists and engineers. They interviewed hundreds of residents, mapped the geographic distribution of those who could hear the hum, and conducted extensive acoustic monitoring throughout the area. Their conclusion was as baffling as the phenomenon itself. The hum was real to those who experienced it, but it had no detectable external source. Some researchers have proposed that the sound originates from underground geological activity, perhaps gas moving through rock formations or tectonic stress creating vibrations. Others suggest it might be related to electromagnetic fields or even top-secret military experiments. But every theory has been tested and found wanting. What makes the Taos Hum even more perplexing is that it's not unique to New Mexico. Similar mysterious humming sounds have been reported in dozens of locations around the world. Bristol, England, Bondi Beach, Australia, Windsor, Ontario. Each location has its own community of hum hearers, and each has baffled local scientists just as thoroughly as Taos has. The psychological impact on those who hear it cannot be understated. Many report sleep disturbances, anxiety, and a constant feeling of unease. Some have described it as psychological torture, an inescapable sound that follows them wherever they go. Yet others who live in the same households hear absolutely nothing. To this day, the Tao's hum continues. New residents occasionally join the ranks of those who can hear it, while others who once heard it clearly report that it has faded or disappeared entirely. The mystery remains as impenetrable as ever, a reminder that our world still holds secrets that resist all attempts at explanation. The Devil's Kettle Falls. Along Minnesota's North Shore, the Brule River creates one of nature's most confounding mysteries. At Judge C.R. Magny State Park, the river splits around a rocky outcrop, creating two distinct waterfalls. The eastern fall behaves exactly as you'd expect, tumbling down into the river below and continuing its journey to Lake Superior. But the western fall, known as Devil's Kettle, simply vanishes. The water plunges into what appears to be a large pothole carved into the volcanic rock, and then it's gone. Completely gone. No one knows where it goes, and despite numerous attempts to trace its path, the mystery has never been solved. This isn't a small stream we're talking about. During peak flow, hundreds of gallons of water per minute disappear into that hole. Over the course of a year, millions of gallons of water vanish without a trace. Basic physics tells us that water doesn't simply cease to exist. It has to go somewhere, but where? The most obvious explanation would be an underground river system that eventually reconnects with the main flow downstream. Hydrologists have tested this theory extensively, using every method at their disposal. They've dropped ping-pong balls into the kettle, hoping to see them emerge somewhere downstream. They've used fluorescent dyes that should show up even in trace amounts. They've even thrown in logs and other large objects that would be impossible to miss if they resurfaced. Nothing has ever been recovered. In the 1960s, researchers dropped colored dye into Devil's Kettle and monitored the entire river system downstream, all the way to Lake Superior. They used sensitive equipment capable of detecting even minute traces of the dye. The result was the same as every other attempt. The dye vanished completely, as if it had never existed. Some have theorized that the water flows into a vast underground cave system, possibly extending for miles beneath the bedrock. Minnesota does have extensive limestone cave networks in other regions, but the Devil's Kettle area is composed of volcanic rhyolite, which doesn't typically form large cave systems. Geological surveys have found no evidence of significant underground caverns in the area. Another possibility is that the water emerges underwater directly into Lake Superior, making detection nearly impossible. But even this theory has problems. The distance from Devil's Kettle to the lake is substantial, and the elevation change would require a remarkably complex underground pathway. Moreover, thermal imaging and underwater surveys near the shoreline have failed to detect any unusual inflows. More exotic theories have been proposed over the years. Some suggest the water flows into a deep underground aquifer system that extends far beyond the immediate area. Others have proposed that unique geological conditions create a kind of natural drain that disperses the water through microscopic fractures in the bedrock. But none of these explanations have been proven, and many seem to require geological conditions that simply don't exist in the region, Recent studies using advanced ground-penetrating radar and seismic equipment have provided new data but no definitive answers. The surveys confirm that there are indeed underground spaces beneath the kettle, but their extent and destination remain unknown. The water continues to vanish day after day, year after year, carrying with it one of geology's most persistent puzzles. What makes Devil's Kettle particularly maddening for scientists is that it should be solvable. This isn't some ancient mystery lost to time or some phenomenon that occurs only under rare conditions. It's happening right now, continuously in a location that's easily accessible to researchers. Yet despite modern technology and decades of investigation, the fate of that water remains as mysterious as ever. The Sailing Stones of Death Valley. In one of the most desolate places on Earth, an impossible phenomenon has been occurring for centuries. Death Valley's racetrack playa is a flat, dry lake bed where massive boulders, some weighing hundreds of pounds, somehow move across the desert floor on their own, leaving perfectly straight trails behind them in the hard-pan mud. These aren't pebbles or small rocks. Many of the moving stones are enormous, requiring tremendous force to budge them even slightly. Yet somehow they glide across the playa floor, changing direction, moving in parallel lines and creating geometric patterns that seem almost deliberately crafted. The trails they leave behind can stretch for hundreds of yards, creating an otherworldly landscape that defies immediate explanation. The mystery deepened because no one had ever actually witnessed the stones moving. The trails were undeniable evidence that movement had occurred, but the stones themselves appeared to sit motionless for years at a time. Researchers would visit the playa, measure and photograph the stone positions, then return months or years later to find that some had moved significant distances while others remained exactly where they had been. For decades, scientists proposed various theories to explain the sailing stones. The most popular explanation involved a combination of rare weather conditions. According to this theory, occasional flooding would cover the playa with a thin sheet of water. On cold desert nights, this water would freeze into thin sheets of ice. As the sun rose and desert winds picked up, these ice sheets would break apart and be pushed by the wind, carrying the stones along like rafts. But there were problems with this theory. The forces required to move some of the larger stones seemed impossibly large for thin ice sheets to generate. Moreover, many of the stone trails showed no evidence of the chaotic, irregular movement that would be expected from ice sheets breaking apart and tumbling in the wind. Instead, many trails were remarkably straight and purposeful. Other theories proposed that underground seismic activity might cause the stones to move, or that unique combinations of wind and sand might create forces capable of pushing the massive rocks. Some even suggested that the stones might move during rare flash floods, when temporary rivers could provide enough force to relocate them. But none of these explanations adequately accounted for all the observed phenomena. The breakthrough came in 2014, when researchers finally witnessed the stones moving for the first time. Using GPS trackers and time-lapse photography, they discovered that the movement occurs during very specific and rare conditions. When rain fills the playa with just an inch or two of water, freezing overnight temperatures can create thin sheets of ice. As the sun rises and the ice begins to melt and break apart, gentle winds can push these ice sheets around the shallow pond. But here's the remarkable part. The moving ice doesn't push the stones like bulldozers. Instead, it creates a phenomenon the researchers called ice shoves, where the thin ice sheets generate just enough force to overcome the suction between the stones and the muddy playa floor. Once that bond is broken, even gentle forces can keep the stones moving at incredibly slow speeds, sometimes just a few inches per minute. The movement is so gradual that even if you were standing right there watching, you might not notice it happening. It requires perfect conditions, rare weather patterns, and a precise combination of temperature, wind, and water depth. Most importantly, it only occurs during brief windows when all these factors align, which might happen only once every few years. Yet even with this explanation, questions remain. Some of the stone movements still don't perfectly match the ice sheet theory, and researchers continue to study the playa to understand all the mechanisms at work. The sailing stones of Death Valley remind us that sometimes the most impossible-seeming mysteries have explanations that are almost as remarkable as the phenomena themselves. The WOW signal. On August 15, 1977, at exactly 23:16 Eastern Daylight Time, a radio telescope in Ohio detected something that would forever change how we think about our place in the universe. Dr. Jerry Amon was reviewing computer printouts from the Big Ear radio telescope when he noticed an anomaly so striking that he grabbed a red pen and circled it, writing "Wow" in the margin. That single exclamation would give this cosmic mystery its name. The signal lasted exactly 72 seconds. The maximum time the telescope could track any single point in space as Earth rotated. It was incredibly strong, more than 30 times louder than the background noise of deep space. But what made it truly extraordinary was its frequency. The signal was detected at 1420 megahertz, the exact frequency that hydrogen atoms emit when they flip their electron spin. This frequency is significant because hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe, and many scientists believe any intelligent civilization would choose this frequency for interstellar communication. The signal appeared to come from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, specifically from an area of space with no known stars or planets capable of supporting life. It was narrowband, meaning it was concentrated in a very specific frequency range rather than spread across a broad spectrum like natural cosmic phenomena typically are. This narrowband characteristic is exactly what scientists would expect from an artificial transmission. What makes the WOW signal even more perplexing is what happened next, or rather what didn't happen. Despite decades of searching, the signal has never been detected again. The Big Ear telescope continued monitoring that same area of space for years, but the signal never repeated. Other radio telescopes around the world have pointed their receivers toward that region of space, but they've found only silence. Scientists have proposed numerous explanations over the years. Some suggest it could have been a reflection of Earth-based radio transmissions bouncing off space debris or satellites. Others propose it might have been interference from military radar or other terrestrial sources. But each of these explanations has significant problems. The signal's characteristics don't match any known form of interference, and its frequency was specifically protected for radio astronomy. meaning no Earth-based transmitters should have been operating at that wavel exotic natural length. More explanations have been suggested. Perhaps it was a previously unknown type of pulsar or magnetar exhibiting unusual behavior. Maybe it was the death scream of a star collapsing into a black hole, or energy released during some other violent cosmic event. But again, none of these natural phenomena typically produce the narrow, concentrated signal that was observed. The possibility that remains most tantalizing is also the most unsettling. What if the WOW signal really was a transmission from an intelligent extraterrestrial civilization? The implications would be staggering. It would mean we are not alone in the universe, and that somewhere among the stars, another intelligence was capable of constructing technology powerful enough to send signals across interstellar space. But if that's true, why haven't we heard from them again? Perhaps their transmission was directional, like a lighthouse beam sweeping across space, and Earth just happened to be in the right position for those 72 seconds to catch it. Maybe their civilization sent out a brief announcement of their existence and then went silent, waiting to see if anyone would respond. Or perhaps something happened to them in the decades since, and that signal represents the last gasp of a dying world. The search continues. Modern radio telescopes are more sensitive than ever, and projects like SETI continue monitoring the cosmos for signs of intelligent life. But the WOW signal remains unique, a 72-second whisper from the void that has never been repeated or explained. It stands as perhaps the most compelling evidence we have that we might not be alone, and simultaneously the most frustrating reminder of how little we truly know about the universe around us. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. In the winter of 1959, 9 experienced hikers set out to conquer the challenging terrain of the northern Ural Mountains in Russia. Led by Igor Dyatlov, the group consisted of students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, all skilled in winter mountaineering and outdoor survival. They never returned alive, and the circumstances of their deaths remain one of the most baffling mysteries of the 20th century. The expedition was meant to reach Otorten, a mountain whose name translates roughly to "don't go there" in the local Mansi language. The group had planned a 16-day trek through some of the most remote and challenging terrain in Russia. On January 27th, they sent their last known communication, a telegram confirming they had reached the village of Vizhai and were about to enter the uninhabited wilderness. When the group failed to return as scheduled, search parties were organized. On February 26th, searchers discovered the hikers' abandoned tent on the slopes of what would later be renamed Dyatlov Pass. The tent had been cut open from the inside, as if the occupants had slashed their way out in desperate haste. Most disturbing of all, the hikers' footprints in the snow showed they had fled into the freezing wilderness wearing little or no clothing. The first 2 bodies were found at the edge of a nearby forest, lying beneath a large cedar tree. They were barefoot and dressed only in underwear, despite the fact that temperatures that night had dropped to minus 25 degrees Fahrenheit. 3 more bodies, including Dyatlov himself, were discovered between the cedar tree and the tent, apparently having collapsed while trying to return to shelter. It took searchers 2 more months to locate the remaining 4 bodies buried under several feet of snow in a ravine about 75 meters from the cedar tree. These bodies showed the most disturbing evidence of all. One had massive chest fractures, another had severe skull damage, and a third was missing her tongue and eyes. The injuries were so severe that the medical examiner compared them to those typically seen in high-speed car crashes. Yet there were no external wounds on any of the bodies. No cuts, bruises, or signs of struggle. Whatever had caused these devastating internal injuries had done so without breaking the skin. The force required to inflict such damage would have been enormous, far beyond what any human attacker could generate. Traces of radioactivity were detected on some of the victims' clothing, though the levels were not considered immediately dangerous. Some of the fabric showed an unusual orange coloration that couldn't be explained. Family members who attended the funerals reported that the skin of the deceased had a strange orange tint, and their hair had turned gray. The official investigation concluded that the hikers had died from a compelling natural force, which the authorities were unable to identify. The case files were immediately classified and sealed for decades. When they were finally released, they raised more questions than they answered. The theories proposed over the years have ranged from the plausible to the fantastic. Some suggest an avalanche struck the camp, forcing the hikers to cut their way out of the tent and flee. But the tent was found largely intact and properly anchored, and avalanche experts have noted that the terrain wasn't particularly prone to avalanches. Moreover, no avalanche debris was found at the site. Military testing has been suggested as an explanation. The area was known to be used for secret weapons testing, and some theorists propose that the hikers accidentally encountered a military experiment involving new weapons or aircraft. The radiation traces and unusual injuries could potentially support this theory, but no definitive evidence has ever been found. More exotic explanations have included encounters with indigenous Mansi people defending sacred territory, attacks by escaped prisoners from nearby gulags, or even UFO encounters. Each theory attempts to account for some aspects of the evidence while failing to explain others. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the investigation and concluded that a rare type of avalanche called a katabatic wind avalanche had been responsible. They argued that unusual weather conditions had created a delayed avalanche that struck the tent hours after the hikers had set up camp. But this explanation still doesn't account for many of the mysterious aspects of the case, including the severe internal injuries, the radiation traces, or why experienced mountaineers would flee into deadly cold wearing almost no clothing. The Dyatlov Pass incident continues to fascinate investigators and conspiracy theorists alike. It represents a perfect storm of mysterious circumstances, incomplete evidence, and official secrecy that has created one of the most enduring unsolved mysteries of our time. Whatever happened on that mountain in 1959 took 9 lives and left behind questions that may never be fully answered. The Antikythera mechanism. In the year 1901, sponge divers working off the Greek island of Antikythera made a discovery that would challenge everything historians thought they knew about ancient technology. Exploring a shipwreck that had lain on the seafloor for over 2,000 years, they recovered what appeared to be a corroded lump of bronze and wood. It would take decades before anyone realized they had found the world's first analog computer. The Antikythera mechanism, as it came to be known, is a complex device containing at least 82 bronze gears, arranged in a sophisticated system that could predict the positions of the sun, moon, and planets with remarkable accuracy. Carbon dating and analysis of the shipwreck's other artifacts place its construction sometime between 150 and 100 BCE, during the height of ancient Greek civilization. When researchers first began studying the device seriously in the 1950s and 60s, they were stunned by its complexity. The mechanism could calculate not just the basic movements of celestial bodies, but also predict eclipses, track the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games, and account for the irregular orbit of the moon. The level of astronomical knowledge required to build such a device was thought to be far beyond the capabilities of ancient civilizations. Using modern X-ray tomography and computer modeling, scientists have painstakingly reconstructed how the mechanism would have operated. The user would turn a hand crank, and the complex gear system would rotate bronze dials showing the positions of celestial bodies for any given date. One dial showed the 365-day Egyptian calendar. Another tracked the 19-year cycle that brings the lunar and solar calendars back into alignment. Perhaps most remarkably, the mechanism included what amounts to the world's first known differential gear, a technology that wouldn't be reinvented until the 16th century. The precision required to cut the gear teeth and calibrate the ratios demonstrates a level of mechanical engineering that historians had never imagined existed in the ancient world. The implications are staggering. If ancient Greeks could build such sophisticated mechanical computers, what other advanced technologies might they have possessed? The mechanism suggests a level of scientific and mathematical knowledge that seems almost anachronistic for its time period. It's as if archaeologists had discovered a smartphone in a medieval castle. Who built the Antikythera mechanism remains a mystery. Some researchers believe it was constructed on the island of Rhodes, which was known for its astronomical research and mechanical devices. Others point to connections with the Great Library of Alexandria, where the greatest minds of the ancient world gathered to study mathematics, astronomy, and engineering. The device may have been based on theories developed by the astronomer Hipparchus, who made groundbreaking discoveries about the precession of the equinoxes and the irregular motion of the moon. But Hipparchus lived in the 2nd century BCE, and his original works have been lost to time. The mechanism might represent the only surviving example of his advanced astronomical calculations. What makes the mystery even deeper is that no other devices of comparable complexity have ever been found from the ancient world. If the Greeks had the knowledge and skill to build one such mechanism, surely they would have built others. Yet this single device stands alone, a technological marvel that seems to have emerged from nowhere and led to nothing. The shipwreck itself raises additional questions. The vessel was carrying luxury goods including fine wines, glassware, and bronze and marble statues. The mechanism was clearly a precious cargo, perhaps being transported as a gift between powerful rulers or as part of a scholar's personal collection. Its presence on a merchant ship suggests that such devices, while rare, may not have been entirely unique in the ancient world. Modern attempts to recreate the mechanism using period-appropriate tools and techniques have proven incredibly challenging. The precision required to cut the gear teeth and calibrate the complex ratios pushes the limits of what should have been possible with ancient metalworking tools. Yet somehow, more than 2,000 years ago, unknown craftsmen created this mechanical marvel that continues to amaze scientists today. The Antikythera mechanism stands as a humbling reminder that ancient peoples were far more sophisticated than we often assume. It challenges our linear view of technological progress and suggests that human ingenuity and scientific curiosity have been driving innovation for far longer than we imagined. In the depths of the Mediterranean, corroding slowly for 2 millennia, lay proof that the ancient world held secrets we are only beginning to understand. The Hessdalen Lights. High in the remote valleys of central Norway, an extraordinary phenomenon has been occurring for decades that defies every attempt at scientific explanation. The Hessdalen Valley, a sparsely populated region about 120 kilometers south of Trondheim, has become the site of one of the longest-running UFO investigations in the world, not because of witness testimony or blurry photographs, but because of lights that appear with such regularity that scientists have set up permanent monitoring stations to study them. The lights first gained widespread attention in the early 1980s when residents began reporting strange illuminations appearing in the valley with increasing frequency. These weren't distant stars or aircraft lights. Witnesses described brilliant orbs of light that would hover motionless for minutes or hours, then suddenly accelerate to impossible speeds before vanishing entirely. The lights appeared in various colors, from white and yellow to blue and red, and ranged in size from small points to massive illuminations spanning several meters in diameter. What sets the Hessdalen Lights apart from typical UFO reports is the systematic scientific approach taken to study them. In 1983, Project Hessdalen was established as a formal research initiative, bringing together scientists from multiple countries to investigate the phenomenon using rigorous scientific methods. They installed automated monitoring equipment including radar systems, spectrum analyzers, magnetometers, and sensitive cameras capable of detecting even faint light sources. The results were immediately compelling. The equipment confirmed what witnesses had been reporting for years. Unknown light sources were indeed appearing in the valley, exhibiting behavior that couldn't be explained by any known natural or artificial phenomena. Radar detected objects moving at speeds that varied from completely stationary to over 30,000 kilometers per hour. Spectrum analysis revealed that the lights emitted radiation across multiple frequencies, including some that shouldn't be possible from conventional light sources. Over the following decades, researchers documented hundreds of incidents. Some lights appeared as single points that would drift slowly across the valley before suddenly shooting skyward at tremendous velocity. Others manifested as clusters of lights that would separate and rejoin in complex patterns. Most disturbing of all were lights that seemed to respond to the presence of observers, changing direction or intensity when researchers approached or when aircraft entered the area. The scientific data collected is extensive and thoroughly documented, yet no conventional explanation has ever been found. The lights don't correspond to any known atmospheric phenomena like ball lightning or plasma discharges. They're not reflections from distant cities or vehicles, as they appear even during perfect weather conditions in areas with no nearby light sources. Military activity has been ruled out, and the lights often appear in patterns and locations that would be impossible for any known aircraft. One of the most puzzling aspects is the light's apparent intelligence or purpose. They often appear in the same locations repeatedly, following similar flight paths and exhibiting consistent behaviors. Some researchers have reported that the lights seem to respond to flashlight signals or radio transmissions, though these interactions remain difficult to reproduce consistently. Theories about the Hessdalen lights range from the scientifically plausible to the wildly speculative. Some researchers propose that unique geological conditions in the valley create unknown forms of piezoelectric effects, where pressure on crystalline rock formations generates electrical phenomena. Others suggest that the lights might be related to tectonic stress or underground mineral deposits creating electromagnetic anomalies. More exotic explanations include plasma formations created by unusual atmospheric conditions, interdimensional phenomena, or extraterrestrial visitation. Each theory attempts to account for some characteristics of the lights while failing to explain others. The plasma theory, for instance, might explain the light's ability to change color and shape, but doesn't account for their apparent responsiveness to external stimuli or their precise, repeated flight patterns. Project Hessdalen continues to this day, now equipped with even more sophisticated monitoring equipment, including infrared cameras, radio telescopes, and advanced computer analysis systems. The frequency of sightings has decreased since the peak years of the 1980s, but the lights continue to appear regularly enough to maintain scientific interest and funding. What makes the Hessdalen lights particularly significant in the study of unexplained phenomena is the quality and quantity of scientific data collected. This isn't a case of relying on eyewitness testimony or ambiguous photographs. Multiple independent detection systems have confirmed the existence of genuine anomalous phenomena occurring in the valley. The lights are real. They're measurable, and they remain completely unexplained. The implications extend far beyond a single Norwegian valley. If conventional science cannot explain phenomena that are occurring regularly and being recorded by sophisticated equipment, what does that say about the limits of our current understanding? The Hessdalen lights represent a humbling reminder that our planet still harbors mysteries that resist all attempts at rational explanation. The Marfa lights. In the vast expanse of West Texas, where the desert stretches endlessly toward distant mountains, another light phenomenon has been mystifying observers for well over a century. Near the small town of Marfa, mysterious lights dance across the horizon with such regularity that the state of Texas has built an official viewing area for tourists who come hoping to witness the unexplained spectacle. The Marfa lights appear as glowing orbs that hover, split apart, merge together, and move in patterns that seem to defy natural explanation. Unlike the Hessdalen phenomenon, these lights have been documented by Native American tribes for generations, with some accounts dating back to the 1880s when early settlers first reported seeing unexplained illuminations in the desert. Apache warriors reportedly knew of the lights long before European settlers arrived, interpreting them as spirits of fallen braves still patrolling their ancestral lands. Early cowboys and railroad workers described seeing lights that would appear to be campfires in the distance, only to vanish when approached or reveal themselves to be floating impossibly high above the ground. The lights typically appear about 8 to 10 miles southwest of Marfa, hovering above the desert floor near the Chinati Mountains. Witnesses described them as ranging from baseball size to larger than pickup trucks, glowing in colors from white and yellow to blue, red, and green. They appear most often on clear, dark nights, though they've been spotted during daylight hours as well. What makes the Marfa lights particularly intriguing is their seemingly intelligent behavior. Observers report that the lights often appear to play with each other, dancing around one another in complex choreographed movements. Some split into multiple smaller lights, while others merge together to form larger illuminations. They've been seen to approach observers before retreating, and some witnesses claim the lights respond to flashlight signals or car headlights. Scientific investigations of the Marfa lights have yielded mixed results. Some researchers believe they've identified the source as distant car headlights from US Highway 67, refracted through atmospheric layers that create superior mirages under specific weather conditions. This explanation might account for some sightings, particularly those that appear to move along predictable paths corresponding to the highway. However, this conventional explanation fails to address many aspects of the phenomenon. The lights were being reported long before automobiles existed in the region, and they continue to appear in areas and patterns that don't correspond to highway traffic. Moreover, the lights often exhibit behavior that would be impossible for refracted car headlights, including sudden acceleration, vertical movement, and the ability to split and merge. Other theories propose that the lights result from electrical activity caused by quartz deposits in the surrounding mountains, similar to earthquake lights that sometimes appear during seismic events. The Marfa area does contain significant mineral deposits, and piezoelectric effects could theoretically create luminous phenomena under certain conditions. More speculative explanations include plasma formations created by unique atmospheric conditions in the Chihuahuan Desert, bioluminescent gases escaping from underground sources, or even extraterrestrial activity drawn to the remote and sparsely populated region. The Marfa lights have become so well established that they've transcended their status as a mere curiosity to become part of local culture and economy. The annual Marfa Lights Festival draws thousands of visitors, and the viewing area along Highway 90 is equipped with interpretive signs describing the phenomenon. Yet despite all this attention and numerous scientific investigations, the lights remain as mysterious today as they were to Apache warriors centuries ago. What's particularly striking about both the Hessdalen and Marfa light phenomena is how they challenge our understanding of what constitutes credible evidence. These aren't isolated incidents reported by single witnesses. They're ongoing, repeatable phenomena observed by thousands of people and, in Hestalin's case, thoroughly documented by scientific instruments. Yet they remain unexplained, existing in a frustrating gray area between the clearly natural and the genuinely anomalous, the bloop. In the summer of 1997, an array of underwater microphones positioned throughout the Pacific Ocean detected something that sent shockwaves through the marine biology community. The sound, later dubbed the bloop, was unlike anything ever recorded in Earth's oceans. It was loud enough to be detected by sensors over 5,000 kilometers apart, making it one of the loudest biological sounds ever recorded, if it was biological at all. The bloop lasted for just over a minute, but its implications have resonated for decades. The sound originated from a remote point in the South Pacific, roughly 1,500 miles west of Chile, in some of the deepest and most unexplored waters on our planet. When researchers first analyzed the recording, they were struck by its organic quality. Unlike the mechanical sounds produced by ships, submarines, or geological activity, the bloop had characteristics that suggested it might have come from a living creature. But here's what made it so unsettling. For the bloop to have been produced by an animal, that creature would have had to be many times larger than a blue whale, the largest animal known to exist on Earth. Blue whales can reach lengths of up to 30 meters and produce sounds that travel hundreds of miles underwater. Yet the bloop was detected across an area spanning thousands of miles, suggesting a source of unimaginable proportions. The sound itself defied easy categorization. It began as a low-frequency rumble that rapidly rose in pitch before tapering off, creating a profile that resembled a massive animal call, but on a scale that seemed impossible. Marine biologists compared it to whale songs, but even the largest whale vocalizations pale in comparison to the bloop's intensity and range. The location of the bloop's origin added another layer of mystery. The coordinates placed it near Point Nemo, the most remote location in any ocean, farther from land than anywhere else on Earth. This region of the Pacific is so isolated that the closest human beings are usually astronauts aboard the International Space Station. The crushing depths and extreme remoteness make it one of the least explored areas of our planet, a place where unknown species could theoretically exist undetected. Initial theories focused on the possibility of an unknown marine animal, perhaps a species of whale or squid far larger than any previously discovered. The deep ocean remains largely unexplored, with some estimates suggesting we know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the deepest parts of our own oceans. Could the bloop have been the call of some massive creature lurking in the abyssal depths? Other explanations were more mundane but equally intriguing. Some researchers proposed that the bloop might have been caused by underwater volcanic activity, perhaps a massive eruption or the collapse of an underwater mountain. The Pacific Ocean is part of the Ring of Fire, one of the most geologically active regions on Earth, and underwater seismic events can produce sounds that travel vast distances through the ocean. Another theory suggested that the bloop might have been caused by the movement of massive ice sheets. As icebergs break away from glaciers and move through the ocean, they can create sounds as they scrape against the seafloor or break apart. The Southern Ocean, not far from the bloop's origin point, is home to some of the largest icebergs on Earth. In 2005, researchers at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration announced they had solved the mystery of the bloop. Their analysis concluded that the sound was most likely produced by the friction of a massive iceberg running aground on the seafloor. This explanation accounted for the sound's characteristics and its location in the Southern Ocean region where large icebergs are common. Yet many questions remain unanswered. While the iceberg theory provides a plausible explanation, it doesn't fully account for all aspects of the bloop's acoustic signature. Some characteristics of the sound still seem more consistent with biological origins than geological ones. Moreover, other mysterious sounds have been detected in the world's oceans since 1997, suggesting that the bloop might not have been a unique event. The ocean continues to produce unexplained sounds that challenge our understanding of marine acoustics. Recordings of mysterious calls, rumbles, and vibrations surface regularly, each adding to the growing catalog of underwater mysteries. Some, like the bloop, eventually receive explanations that satisfy most scientists. Others remain completely enigmatic. What the bloop represents, regardless of its ultimate explanation, is a humbling reminder of how little we know about our own planet. The fact that something could produce such a massive sound in our oceans and remain unidentified for years demonstrates the vast gaps in our knowledge of Earth's most remote and inaccessible places. Whether caused by ice, unknown geological processes, or creatures yet to be discovered, the bloop stands as testament to the mysteries that still lurk in the deepest, darkest corners of our world. The phenomenon also highlights the remarkable sensitivity of modern acoustic monitoring systems. The underwater microphone arrays that detected the bloop were originally installed during the Cold War to track submarine movements. Today, these same systems provide scientists with unprecedented access to the acoustic world of the deep ocean, revealing a soundscape far more complex and mysterious than anyone had imagined. The Zone of Silence. In the barren desert of northern Mexico, roughly 50 kilometers southwest of the city of Ceballos, lies a stretch of land that has earned one of the most ominous names in the annals of unexplained phenomena. The Zona del Silencio, or Zone of Silence, is a place where the fundamental laws of physics seem to bend in ways that defy rational explanation. The mystery began in July 1970, when an Athena rocket launched from Green River, Utah, inexplicably veered off course during its flight. Instead of following its predetermined trajectory toward the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico, the rocket traveled over 400 miles south and crashed in this remote section of the Chihuahuan Desert. When recovery teams arrived to collect the wreckage, they discovered something that would forever change how scientists viewed this seemingly ordinary patch of desert. Radio communications failed completely within the crash zone. ACONs and all military radios' emergency B forms of electromagnetic communication simply stopped working. The recovery team found themselves in a technological dead zone where their sophisticated equipment became as useful as rocks. What should have been a routine salvage operation turned into a weeks-long ordeal as teams struggled to coordinate their efforts without any form of electronic communication. But the rocket crash was just the beginning. As word of the communication blackout spread, researchers began investigating the area more thoroughly. What they discovered defied everything they thought they knew about electromagnetic radiation and radio wave propagation. The zone consistently blocked radio signals across multiple frequency ranges from AM and FM radio to shortwave and even satellite communications. The affected area forms a rough triangle approximately 50 kilometers wide, with boundaries that seem to shift slightly depending on atmospheric conditions and solar activity. Within this zone, compasses spin wildly, unable to find magnetic north. GPS devices lose their satellite connections entirely, leaving modern navigation systems completely useless. Even more disturbing, some researchers report that digital watches and electronic equipment malfunction or stop working altogether. Local residents have known about the zone's unusual properties for generations, though they interpreted them through the lens of folklore rather than science. Ranchers and farmers in the area tell stories of radios suddenly going silent when they cross certain invisible boundaries and of strange lights that dance across the desert floor on clear nights. They speak of an area where time seems to move differently, where travelers can become disoriented and lose hours without explanation. Scientists have proposed several theories to explain the zone of silence, but none fully account for all the observed phenomena. Some researchers believe the area sits atop a massive meteorite impact site, with unusual mineral deposits creating electromagnetic anomalies. The desert floor in this region does contain higher than normal concentrations of iron oxide and other metallic compounds that could theoretically interfere with radio signals. Another theory focuses on the zone's position along the 27th parallel north, the same latitude that passes through the Bermuda Triangle and the Himalayas. Some researchers have noted that this parallel seems to be associated with various unexplained phenomena around the globe, leading to speculation about unknown atmospheric or magnetic properties at this specific latitude. More exotic explanations have emerged over the years. Some propose that the zone represents a natural portal or dimensional rift where the normal laws of physics break down. Others suggest it might be related to underground alien installations or secret government experiments, theories fueled by the military's continued interest in the area and reports of unidentified aircraft sightings. What makes the zone of silence particularly intriguing is its apparent selectivity. While radio communications fail consistently, other forms of technology sometimes work normally. Mechanical devices like watches and compasses are affected, but cameras and other optical equipment typically function without problems. This selective interference suggests a phenomenon more complex than simple electromagnetic blocking. The zone has also become associated with unusual biological phenomena. Local flora includes plant species that exist nowhere else on Earth, evolutionary adaptations that seem to have developed in isolation despite the area's relatively recent geological formation. Some of these plants exhibit unusual growth patterns and chemical compositions that botanical experts struggle to explain. Wildlife behavior in the zone is equally mysterious. Animals that normally rely on magnetic navigation become disoriented and confused. Migratory birds often change course abruptly when approaching the area, and domestic animals show signs of anxiety and distress. Yet other species seem to thrive in the zone, displaying behaviors and characteristics not observed in populations outside the affected area. Recent advances in satellite technology have provided new tools for studying the zone of silence, but they've also deepened the mystery. Satellite imagery reveals geological formations and mineral patterns that don't match surrounding areas, suggesting the zone may have unique properties extending deep underground. Ground-penetrating radar and magnetic surveys have detected anomalous structures beneath the desert surface, but their nature and origin remain unknown. The Mexican government has established a biosphere reserve encompassing much of the zone, officially recognizing it as an area of unique scientific interest. Research stations have been constructed on the periphery of the affected area, allowing scientists to study the phenomenon while maintaining communication with the outside world. Yet despite decades of investigation and increasingly sophisticated equipment, the fundamental mystery remains unsolved. What continues to perplex researchers is the zone's apparent stability. Unlike many electromagnetic anomalies that fluctuate with solar activity or atmospheric conditions, the zone of silence maintains its properties with remarkable consistency. The boundaries may shift slightly, but the core area continues to block radio communications as effectively today as it did when first discovered over half a century ago, the Solway Firth spaceman. On May 23, 1964, Jim Templeton took what he thought would be a simple family photograph. A firefighter and amateur photographer from Carlisle, England, he had brought his wife and young daughter Elizabeth to the scenic marshlands of Solway Firth in Cumbria for a pleasant afternoon outing. The resulting photograph would become one of the most analyzed and debated images in the history of unexplained phenomena. Templeton was using a Kodak SLR camera loaded with Kodachrome film, taking pictures of his 5-year-old daughter Elizabeth as she picked flowers in the marsh grass. The day was clear and bright, with excellent visibility across the expansive wetlands. No other people were visible in the area, and the Templetons had the remote location entirely to themselves. When Templeton developed the film several days later, he was shocked by what he saw. In one of the photographs, clearly visible behind his daughter, stood the figure of what appeared to be a person in a white protective suit or spacesuit. The figure was tall and imposing, positioned directly behind Elizabeth but apparently unnoticed by the family during their outing. The mysterious figure wore what looked like a white helmet and protective clothing, reminiscent of the spacesuits worn by astronauts or the protective gear used by nuclear workers. The image was sharp and clear, showing details of the figure's outline and posture. Most unnervingly, the figure appeared to be looking directly at the camera, though no facial features were visible through what seemed to be a reflective visor. Templeton was certain that no one else had been present when he took the photograph. He and his wife had been watching Elizabeth continuously, and the surrounding marshland offered no concealment where someone could have hidden. The appearance of the figure seemed impossible, yet there it was, captured clearly on film. Local police examined the photograph and the camera equipment but could find no evidence of tampering or double exposure. The negative showed no signs of manipulation, and photography experts confirmed that the image appeared to be genuine. Kodak, the film manufacturer, offered a reward to anyone who could prove the photograph was faked, but no one ever claimed it. The photograph gained national attention when it was published in newspapers across Britain. The mysterious figure was dubbed the Solway Firth Spaceman, and theories about its identity ranged from the plausible to the fantastic. Some suggested it might be a person in protective clothing who had somehow escaped notice, while others proposed more exotic explanations involving extraterrestrial visitors or interdimensional beings. What added credibility to the photograph was Jim Templeton's reputation in the community. He was known as an honest, straightforward man with no interest in publicity or hoaxes. His account of the events never varied, and he consistently maintained that no other person had been present when the photograph was taken. The mystery deepened when Templeton reported a visit from two men claiming to be government officials. They arrived at his home shortly after the photograph gained media attention, identifying themselves only as representatives from the Ministry of Defense. The men wore identical black suits and showed identification that Templeton found difficult to read or remember clearly, from the phantom sounds that haunt only select ears to ancient computers that shouldn't exist. From lights that dance with apparent intelligence to signals from the cosmic void. These mysteries remind us that our world still holds secrets far beyond our comprehension. Each phenomenon challenges our assumptions about reality itself, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable truth that there are forces and events operating just beyond the reach of our current understanding. Whether these mysteries will ever yield their secrets or continue to perplex future generations remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. In a universe filled with wonders we've yet to discover, the greatest mystery may be that we know far less about our own world than we dare to admit.